Today we'll be having a look at the Titan disc brake assembly with a 13-inch hub and rotor assembly, 8 on 6.5 bolt pattern with a Dacromat finish rated for 7,000 pounds. This is part number THRCM13378DACEK. Here's what our brakes look like installed. Now this kit is a great option for you because it has everything that you need in order to place one side of your axle brakes. You'll have a brand new rotor and hub assembly, a brand new loaded caliper with your brake pads, and one thing that sets this apart from others is that this kit does come with new bearings and a seal, but it also comes with this bearing buddy here. You can just take this cap off, and then this bearing buddy will force grease into your bearings so they're continuously greased as you're driving down the road, and that'll help reduce friction and heat and extend the service life between having to grease bearings. Now these brakes have a 7,000 pound capacity, and they'll work with 7,000 pound axles that have a 5-bolt mounting flange on them. Now in our particular case, we installed this on a trailer that had electric drum brakes to begin with. Now electric drum brakes work fine in most instances, but if you're looking for an increased stopping power and something that offers longer longevity and also something that is easier to work on with fewer moving parts, a disc brake setup is the way to go. Disc brakes offer increased clamping force, which offers increased stopping power, and by having increased stopping power, you are reducing your stopping distance, making it easier for you to stop safely in an emergency situation. Also, they help dissipate heat faster with this vented rotor here. So you don't have to worry about our brakes becoming overheated if we're traveling down a mountain pass or have an emergency stop. Our brakes will cool faster and they'll work better. One thing that's unique about this kit is that it is sold individually. So if you're servicing your entire axle, you will need to buy 2, one for each side. The right side will work on the left side and vice versa, because the mounting flange for the caliper has multiple holes in it, so you can position it however you need, depending on the side of the axle that you're working on. Now, because this will work on either your driver or passenger side of your axle, your caliper also has 2 bleeder screws. This way you can bleed the brake fluid from it appropriately to get all of the air out of the system, and your brakes will work properly. Whenever you bleed them, you just want to make sure that you use the bleeder screw on the top, the one that's above where the brake hose screws into the caliper. This will let all the air out properly. Now our rotor has an overall diameter of 13 inches, and it is designed to work with 16-inch diameter wheels at the minimum. We also need to keep in mind that this has an 8 on 6.5 bolt pattern with 1/2-inch diameter wheel studs. The Dacromat finish on our brakes provides superior rust and corrosion resistance. They do feature a 500-hour salt spray rating, making this ideal for boat trailers. Now, if you are going to be upgrading from drum brakes to a hydraulic setup like this, you need to choose a hydraulic actuator that is rated for at least 1,500 PSI of pressure. Now that we've gone over some features of our brakes, we'll show you how to get them installed. We'll start by taking our wheel off of our axle and setting it aside. Now in our particular case, we're converting our trailer from electric drum brakes to electric over hydraulic disc brakes. So we need to remove our current drum and hub assembly. In order to do that, we need to knock off our cap right here for our grease. Just take a rubber mallet. Now we're going to wipe away our grease so we have clean access to the hardware that holds our hub in place. Okay, we have a cotter pin right here. We're going to bend these tabs down at the end. Then we'll push the cotter pin up through the hole on the other side and pull it out. Now we'll unscrew our nut and we'll remove our washer here. And our outer bearing. Now we can grab the entire hub and pull it off. And we'll set this aside. Now we'll take a towel and we'll wipe our spindle clean of grease and inspect for any damage such as scoring, grooving, or burns. Now in our case, everything still looks intact. Now on the back side of our backing plate for our brake assembly here, we have our electric brake wires here. We need to cut these wires so we can remove the assembly. Now our backing plate with our brake assembly is held in place with 5 9/16 nuts. So we're going to remove these nuts. With our nuts removed, we can take the assembly and pull it off of our axle. Now because our axle is equipped with an easy lube, we're going to flush out the old grease inside of it by giving it a couple squirts of a grease gun. Once we see nice clean grease come through the hole, we know we have it flushed out. This is our new caliper mounting flange. You'll notice there's multiple holes, so we can align this appropriately on either side of the trailer. It also says outside. We want this facing to the outside. Now, when we mount this, we want to make sure that our caliper is going to be facing towards the back of the trailer. So we'll just slide this over onto our studs, lining up the holes where it faces towards the back as straight up and down as possible. And we'll reinstall the nuts that we removed. Now we'll tighten these down, and we'll tighten these like we tighten lug nuts on a wheel in an alternating star pattern. And now we'll torque them following the same pattern, an alternating star pattern. Okay, now we have our hub and rotor assembly, our bearings, and our seal. We need to pack our bearings with grease. We're using grease that we have available on our website for this. Once we have a decent amount on it, we can remove it and start to work it in. And once the grease starts to seep through in this area here where you can't see the roller bearings anymore, you know you're starting to actually get enough grease in there. Now we'll place this inside of the hub section of our rotor. We'll test and see how it rotates. It's rotating very nicely. Now that we have our inner bearing in place, we can install our seal. This section here will face towards the bearing, and this section here will face away from it. So we'll place it inside of the hub, and now we need to drive it in place. You can use a seal driver for this, or if you don't have one, a block of wood works just as well. We'll use the block of wood and we'll tap it in place with a hammer. You'll see how it's sitting flush all the way around the hub, and that's exactly what we're looking for. Now we'll pack our outer bearing the same way. Now we can set this to the side for right now, and we'll go install our hub assembly. So we'll slide the rotor and hub assembly onto our spindle. Now we'll take our outer bearing and slide it into our hub. Now we'll take our washer, slide it over our spindle, and we'll thread our castle nut back on. And now we'll tighten down our nut. And when I do this, I like to spin the rotor just to help seat the bearing properly. We don't need to go overly tight, just enough so it's snug and that our cotter pin hole lines up with the holes in the castle nut. Now we'll take a cotter pin. I have a replacement one here. These are available on our website. We'll drop it through the hole. We'll bend the tabs out on it. This will secure it into place and keep the nut from backing off. Now we'll take a grease gun again, and we will fully fill our hub with grease until we start to see it come out of our outer bearing. Now this piece here, this is our bearing buddy. What this is a spring-loaded device which will push grease in to our bearings. Now, since we have an Easy Lube axle, we really don't need this, but if you don't have an Easy Lube axle, this basically converts your assembly into an Easy Lube axle. We can still use this on ours. It's not a big deal. We'll just thread this onto our hub. Now we'll tighten this down using a pair of adjustable pliers. Just snug it on. Now we'll take our grease gun again, grease this fitting here. As we fill this area with grease, this section here will come out and press against the spring. And the spring will push grease into our bearings, basically continuously greasing them as we're driving down the road. Now we'll slide on our cover for our bearing buddy. This will keep dirt and debris from getting inside here, making it difficult for us to use our fitting. This will just slide over the end and push in place. Now we'll take some brake parts cleaner and a shop towel, and we're going to wipe down the surfaces where our brake pads will contact our rotor. Okay, now we'll take our caliper with the preloaded pads and we'll slide this over our rotor, and we'll secure it to our caliper mounting bracket using the bolts. So we're just going to get these started by hand first. And then we'll use a 1/2-inch wrench to finish tighten them. Okay, this is our brake hose that we installed earlier. We're going to screw this into the fitting for our brake hose. We do have brake line and hose kits available on our website if you're converting to electric over hydraulic. So we'll get that started by hand. Okay, with that tightened down, we're good to go back here. And that completes our look at the Titan disc brake assembly with a 13-inch hub and rotor assembly. This is part number THRC M13378DACEK.